Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the SBK Betting Podcast. My name is Adam Bayliss, and if you haven't noticed by now, I'm not Jess Stafford. She's on the ground at Goodwood doing the good work of horse racing for everyone. So if you want to see Jess Stafford, tune in on TV. But we're here recording the SBK Betting Podcast for the Saturday of glorious Goodwood, looking at a couple of races there and a couple of races elsewhere. As ever, I am joined by the Goliath duo. See what I did there? Of racing tipsters, Mr. TC and Mr. Ross Millar. How are you both?
A bit poor not for finding Goliath, Adam. You know, he was pretty impressive, wasn't he? And I think he was probably the one horse that I don't think we even gave a mention to, which is pretty poor. Doesn't happen very often, but he was very impressive. Need to revise our views, I think, of exactly the standings in that division.
Well done. What did you make of that, TC? What did you make of Goliath?
He was very impressive, wasn't he? But his best RPR going into the race was around 114, so he had to improve £12 to win on what we knew. Whether he actually did improve that £12, obviously more than £12, the way he won, or if the others all underperformed, I don't know. I stick by the fact that Auguste Rodin is never going to be a play at a short price for me. He's just way too inconsistent for my liking. I know the excuses came out after, and I love Aidan O'Brien. I believe everything he says, but sometimes with a horse there are too many excuses, and that kind of feels the way with Auguste Rodin now. But nevertheless, Christophe Simeon coming over to these shores yet again and riding another big race winner.
I don't want to derail the podcast for like 2 minutes, but is it just a bit of a PR stunt to make this horse like the highest rated in the world now? I mean, I'm really struggling to wrap my head around that, or perhaps it just sort of shows where racing's at currently.
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, the lads at Ballydoyle and Cornwall are going to talk him up because they have stallion prospects ahead with Auguste Rodin, and they want the fee to be as much as possible, obviously, for the organisation, and that's completely understandable. And anyone to say, oh, this is PR, and then doesn't expect more PR needs to have a question to themselves. But there is no way he is one of the top tier horses we've seen in the last decade. I know he's a 6-time Group 1 winner, but at the same time, the majority of those races have fallen apart. And you have to consider the amount of blowouts he's had, especially in this race, the King George, for the last 2 years. He's very hot and cold. And I think anyone that's going to be breeding with him, with their mares next year or moving forward whenever he's retired, they need to consider that, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Ross, what's your take?
Yeah, I think TC's absolutely nailed it. I mean, I wonder whether they're actually less worried about him being highest rated and more worried about him having a reputation for being a really temperamental so-and-so. Because breeders, there's lots of things that you'll overlook, you know, a lack of speed, a preference for ground. Temperament is key, as far as I'm concerned, in anything to do with horses. They can have all the ability in the world. If you can't access it, it's absolutely useless to you, and it's the most frustrating thing in the world. You'd much rather have a horse with a little bit less ability that gives it its all than a horse that's got all the ability in the world and decides when and if it'll display that ability.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, talking through my pocket as someone that's on blue stocking, it was incredibly frustrating. But there we are. We move on. And we move on to glorious Goodwood, which is well underway. And before we get into Saturday's races, I should ask you both, you know, what you've made of the week so far. We're recording on Thursday morning. Let's just talk about, I suppose, some of the trends, some of the draw bias, any horses that you've been impressed with. TC, take us away.
Well, to be honest with you, I didn't catch a single race yesterday as I was playing golf, as you can probably see by this awful tan on my neck from wearing a polo. I won't show you the golf hand. That tan's even worse. But I did watch quite a few races on the Tuesday. And obviously, the fast ground has been the main talking point. The times have been all sub-standard. If you look on Racing Post or wherever you check the times, it says fast by however many seconds, which shows just how quick it is at Goodwood and probably will be for the rest of the week, given the forecast. So you definitely want fast ground horses. And also, I just want to mention Kyprios, because I did kind of slate an Aidan O'Brien horse there in Auguste Rodin. Not really, but just an honest opinion. Now, my honest opinion with Kyprios is that he's probably the best stayer we've seen in the last 10, 15 years. I think he's better than Yates. I think he's better than Stradivarius. And I loved Stradivarius. RPRs would prove that. He had a best RPR of 128 prior to winning on Tuesday. And Stradivarius, I think, was 126 and Yates was 125 or something very similar to that. So I think we've seen one of the best horses in recent history anyway in Kyprios. And hopefully he continues his winning streak.
That's Kyprios of the SBK Vintage Crop Stakes.
Indeed.
Ross, what have you been impressed with this week, mate?
I was quite impressed by the Godolphin horse from Maury City in the Vintage Stakes. Didn't look the deepest contest, but he did it really nicely. Looked to really improve for a step up to 7 furlongs. So he might be one going forward. It's by Oasis Dream. The pedigree didn't scream out that he would absolutely improve for 7 furlongs, and therefore it's a bit of a guess as to whether he'd perhaps stay a mile, but he looked really quick and pacey. Instantly afterwards, Charlie Appleby said he thinks he's more of an out-and-out 2-year-old. He doesn't expect to have as much improvement next year as a 3-year-old, but I think they'll push on with him, probably end up in the Breeders' Cup, I suspect, at the end of the season. He looked impressive. Completely echo what TC said about Kyprios. Having watched some of the Olympics where some of these sports have pacemakers and that sort of thing, I would love to have a race where we could have a horse jump in at a mile into the race just to drag Kyprios a little bit further, just to see what he could really do. I do believe he's absolutely the best there. Probably I've seen on the flat. He's more adaptable than anything I've seen. He's got speed, he stays, just does everything with a little bit kept up his sleeve. He was really impressive. And you have to say, notable speech, bouncing back in the Sussex was a really impressive performance. Henry Longfellow, I think, probably isn't as good as I hoped he'd be. And obviously, Rosalian missing out made it an easier job. But much goes on about the welfare and looking after horses. I can't tell you the job they must have done to have bounced him back from Ascot, where he was clearly a little bit over the top, massively underperformed, to 40 odd days later, whatever it is, have him back running like that. It's a really good piece of training, and I was particularly impressed by him.
Yeah, I'd have to echo that. I thought Notable Speech was phenomenal yesterday. Really, really good winner. Right, let's move on to Saturday then. We'll start with the Lillie Langtry Stakes, which is a bit disappointing, I suppose, but we'll go through it. So Free Wind heads to market 5-2, Keys Chorister 4-1. It's a mad price. Mellow 9-2, River of Stars 10s, and last year's winner Sumo Sam 10s as well. TC, what do you like?
To be honest, I don't love this race, and I kind of share the same opinion as you, I think, from the way you previewed that. I won't be having a bet in it. In situations like this, obviously for podcast purposes, I can't just leave it there. So it's wise to put up who I believe is the most logical winner, and that is the favourite, which is Free Wind. I think the market's definitely got that right, putting her towards the top. Now, there are numerous reasons for that. Firstly, I think 3-1, 5-2, whatever price she is very fair. And many people will say, well, you're defaulting on the favourite and it's all about value. I do think there is value there in Free Wind's price, even though she is favourite. Secondly, she's won 6 of her 14 outings, and that's pretty prolific for a horse of her nature. She's already a course winner at Goodwood as well. She won her maiden here back in 2021, so that ticks the track box, which many of these horses don't tick. They've never won here before, and it's a relatively unique circuit, albeit not as unique as, say, an Epsom. She's a proper Grade 2 performer. She's won 3 times at this level already. Again, ticking the class box. We know that she's more than capable of winning a race like the Lillie Langtry. And albeit last year she disappointed, the ground was just gone for her. It was heavy ground. Frankie actually moved her into the race and she looked like she was going to play a huge part, and then she just got super tired late in the day. Now, she came back this season. She had to prove that she still retained all of her ability because she is getting older now. And I think she did. She ran a good second behind Blue Stocking, who obviously boosted the form last weekend in the King George. So there's another tick in the box. A horse in good form, going to Goodwood, where she's won before, in a class of race that she is more than capable of winning. The rattling fast ground, though, is the big positive for her. She loves hearing her hooves rattle underfoot, and she's going to get that. I imagine she's going to come late with a big run down the outside and hopefully chin them all, but I won't be having a bet in the race.
Copy that. Ross, I know you're a Free Wind fan as well. Anything to add to that case?
Just that I will be having a bet. I think she's good value at 5-2. I really like Keys Chorister, and I like Clive Washburn for what it's worth as well. I mean, I think it goes over the top a little bit sometimes, but don't we all? And, this is a sport that at the moment certainly isn't built on financial gains, because, we know prize money is poor. So it's built on passion. And if people like him, can't be celebrated, it's a bit of a sad show, I think. He's clearly very passionate about this mare. They've got it all planned out. They want to come for this race because I think it's easier, comes back in trip, drops in grade. I get all of those things. I'm not sure that this drop in trip is ideal for her. Her last win did come at this trip, but that was at Saint Cloud on slow ground. I just worry she's going to have the speed for that. And I'm not mad on the jockey booking either, I'm afraid. Don't like planning jockeys, but Harry Bentley ended up in Hong Kong for a reason, really. He was finding it tough going to get the rides he felt he deserved over here. I think that's a very strange jockey booking. I see he's not ridden her before. Just worry about her. Free Wind's got £5 clear on ratings. I struggle to see what isn't going to suit her about this race. And I would just say, I thought Frankie gave her a poor ride in this race last year. Yes, the ground went against her and probably took her stamina to the very limits, but she was a long way back, had to do a lot of running, turning in. And I think that probably exaggerated how tired she looked at the end. But I think she's a really good price, and I think she'll take all the beating in this.
Yeah, I'd be with Ross for what it's worth. I think 5-2 actually is a touch of value, given how many of these want absolutely nothing to do with quick ground. I did wonder about Night Sparkle, again, down to the ground. She's one of very few that has got a bit of form on the ground, and at 20 to 1, she could be an interesting each way play in the race. Right, moving on to the, I suppose, main event at Goodwood of the day, the Stewards Cup at 3:35. We've got Dark Trooper in as a favourite after that second in the Wokingham. Al-Bashir just behind in the betting, aims to win for the second time in a week after claiming the Whispering Angel handicap at Ascot last week. Other good rosé wines are available. What do you fancy, guys? Big field. It's a great betting heat.
Go on, TC, you go first. This is your
okay. I was waiting for you because I took the mantle on the first race. First, I'm going to start this with a rant, unfortunately. We're without the draw when filming this podcast. Now, I understand we're filming at 11:46 and on Thursday, and declarations were only out about an hour and 15 minutes ago. But that is an hour and 15 minutes where we should have known the draw. We know the draw for all other races, and the Stewards Cup kind of is important with the draw because it's such a big field. It's a sprint handicap. Not only do you want to see where your horse is drawn in terms of the track position, whether you're far side, near side, or middle, but also you need to know where the pace is. And because we don't have the draw, I presume it's being televised maybe tomorrow or later today, it's very difficult to make a solid case for a horse. Now, obviously for podcast purposes, again, I'm going to put up who I think is the most likely winner, but that does kind of go away from the draw factor. If this horse isn't drawn well, or if the pace is on the other side of the track, then I probably won't like this horse as much. So keep an eye out for my SBK column on Friday/Saturday, where we will have the draw, hopefully, and I'll be able to maybe provide an extra tip or be more confident on this horse. The horse who I am going to put up is Apollo 1. Now, he finished second in this race last year. It was on heavy ground, and he was off £2 lower, but he ran a great race, second of 27 horses behind Aberama Gold. And he's a very versatile horse in terms of ground conditions. Obviously, he gets through it when it's testing, as proven by that effort and a subsequent placing on good to soft. But he also goes very well on quick ground, as we saw at Royal Ascot last year, where he finished second behind St. Lawrence in one of the big field handicaps there. I love that Connections this year avoided Ascot. I think that will keep him fresh for these later in the season big handicaps. They went to the Coral Charge instead, a Group 3, run over 5 furlongs. He was too keen in the race. He's probably not classy enough to win the race anyway, and he didn't necessarily perform. But in my opinion, that's not a huge negative. People will see the form figure and think, well, maybe he's on a downward trend, but I disagree. I prefer that as a prep for this. I think he's going to be fresh. He's going to be ready to run well in a race where he should go close. And as he's only £2 higher than his performance last year, and with Richard Keenscote back on, who rides this horse particularly well, I think Apollo 1's got a fantastic chance around 16 to 1. However, as I've already said, it's a caveat. We don't know the draw. Need to check that out for pace and track position purposes.
TC, you talk about the importance of the draw. Where do you want to be drawn? You want double figures, right?
Yeah, I prefer middle to stand side, which is the higher the draw, the better. Generally, middle is actually okay as well because they tend to run in either 2 groups, far side, and then 1 big cluster middle to stand side, or they run in 3 groups, obviously stand side, far side, and middle. The main priority for me, though, is not necessarily the track, albeit, as I say, I would prefer higher the draw. It's just where the pace is. If you're drawn in part of the track where there's no speed, we've seen in these Royal Ascot handicaps, for example, you can end up 4-5 lengths down at the halfway point, and it's so difficult then to get into the race, especially because then if you've got the best horse in that part of the track, it's highly likely you won't have a toe into the final 2 furlongs, so you kind of got to do all the work by yourself. So the pace is the most important, but as you say, the higher the draw generally is better.
Yeah, I always think it's interesting with the Stewards Cup because, with these big heritage handicaps, the cliche line is you want a group horse in a handicap or whatever. But this is the one that always stands out to me as one where that's actually not what you want. You want a kind of a hardened handicapper. You want something that is 4-year-old or more, that sort of seen that got a bit of big field experience, has been around the block a bit. And Ross, I think that's sort of where you're going, perhaps?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to follow on from TC's rant, and I'll leave the ranting to TC because he is famous for that now, but you will not find anyone in the racing industry that wants these draws televised, done. They just want to know where their horse runs so they can get on, and if they're a stable girl, get on with looking after the horse, their trainer, get on with training them, jockeys get on and riding them. The only people that want it are probably a handful of TV executives. No viewer wants to, no one sat there clutching their slip saying, I hope such and such gets such and such draw. No one cares. Just tell us where they are. Give us the information. It's an information-driven sport, and to be starved of it is absolutely nonsensical to me. But yeah, I've gone with 2 hard knockers at decent prices, again, because we don't know where the pace is, I wanted to take two and hope that one of them ends up somewhere near the right area. The first is Mostershire. Was rated as high as 108 at one point. A classy horse. He's raced exclusive over 7 furlongs and a mile. Need to put a line through his run in the Bunbury Cup last time, but he was slowly away. He got bumped, just never was able to get into a rhythm and get into a place where he could challenge from, and did run quite disappointingly. But before that, in the Buckingham Palace Stakes, finished fourth, was second going into the last 100 yards or so, showed loads of pace. I liked how he navigated his way through a big field there, and I just thought that maybe a fast run 6 furlongs in a big field might just be what he wants, for all that he's never tried that before. But he's by Dark Angel, who gets plenty of sprinters. His dam won first time out over just shy of seven furlongs. There's a couple of yards off there. So she clearly had a bit of pace. It is a bit of a shot in the dark, but he's tumbling down the weights. He's clearly a horse who's got a bit of class. He's got some big field handicap experience. I didn't think he was completely wild at 25 to 1. And then the other one is Rumstar, who again has got winning course form. Won in the nursery here 2 years ago in really good style, actually, and again had to navigate a pretty big field in that nursery. Was again disappointing in the Wokingham last time, so another one you had to forgive the last run. But I can forgive a poor run with any horse, particularly sprinters. It is, we know it's a division where you get your luck or you don't get your luck. It's clearly too bad to be true in the Wokingham last time. Previously at Newbury, a length and a half behind Lethal Levi, who's been really well talked up by Carl Burke for this race, still thinks that horse is progressing. Well, Rumstar is now £6 better off, gave £11 at Newbury, only gives £5 now. Was finishing pretty quick, I felt, at Newbury. And instantly, Rob Hornby gets back on. Trevor Whelan's ridden the last couple of times. Rumstar's got 3 wins on the CV. Rob Hornby's been on top for 2 of those. That was just to me that he gets on particularly well with this Jonathan Portman trained horse. And I think Rumstar, back at a track that we know they like, will go well. Again, a double figure price.
Yep, love it. I'm actually with you, Ross, with Mostershire. Looking back at the runs this year, it does smell a bit of a plot. And if you go back and watch that Bunbury Cup run, I just wonder if they might have been looking to get dropped a couple of pounds, shall we say. So, interesting race nonetheless, and a big price at 25s. Right, away from the action on the downs, TC, I gather you're quite keen on 2 at Newmarket.
Yeah, my Nap and Next Best both come at Newmarket, both towards the end of the card. My Nap is going to be in the 425, and that's a horse called Fighter Command. He's not going to be much of a price. I'm hoping he's just north of even money. He may actually open bigger than that, but we'll see. It depends how the traders kind of see this race. But he looks the banker of the day, in my opinion, at the major venues. The Goslings have taken his time with this horse. He's a big, long-striding, scopy individual. Last season, a 2-year-old, he just ran once. Didn't really show up that occasion. Ran with some promise, but didn't win. Came back this year, ran a really good third at Yarmouth when he was given way too much to do. And then made amends at Windsor with a nice performance that day. He kind of looked like he was still a bit of a project. He didn't go about and was super professional through the race. He still looked very raw. So there still looked to be plenty of upside. And albeit they went to the London Gold Cup and disappointed last time, the fact they actually went to the London Gold Cup is a huge positive, considering that is considered the biggest and best 3-year-old handicap in the mid part of the season. As I say, he didn't run very well. He was too keen, he was hampered, he was forced wide in the straight and kind of didn't finish his race off nicely. But now he enters a handicap, faces his elders. He's the only 3-year-old in the race. I think he's well treated. He should go very close, providing he handles Newmarket, which he should. So Fighter Command is the nap in the 425. And the Next Best goes in the finale at Newmarket at 5 o'clock. And it's a horse called Captain Dandy, who was purchased from by Stuart Williams for 12,000 guineas from Richard Fahey recently. And he's immediately sent him out to the track. He hasn't given him too much time, which I like to see. That kind of shows the horse is fit and raring to go. For Richard Fahey, Captain Dandy was a bit hit or miss. But that recent second place finish at Hamilton was pretty strong. He was well clear of the third that day. And I know he's only rated 57, which is £2 higher than his recent runner-up effort. This is a low-grade race, and sometimes with horses like this, they can be really inconsistent. But I think Captain Dandy's trending in the right direction. And we know that Stuart Williams does phenomenal with horses that he bought from in training sales. Just 12,000 guineas, I think this horse is going to be a real money spinner for him. So hopefully Captain Dandy in the 5 o'clock at Newmarket can add to the tally.
Thank you very much, TC. It's a decent little card at Newmarket, actually. I hadn't been through it, but I've just been looking at the entries for the Chalice Stakes at 240, and that's a really interesting heat. Fairy Glen, the 3-year-old there for Simon Lake Christopher. She's looked super progressive on the all-weather. Be interesting to see what she can do against the likes of Ellie May, and there's a George Bowie pair in there that look quite progressive for him. Yeah, really interesting card. Right, Ross Millar, what do you like across Saturday? I gather there's one across the Irish Sea for you here.
Yeah, I've been really well behaved, Adam, and Alex actually sent at the bottom of the memo this week, best behaviour. So instantly that makes me want to be on my worst behaviour and abandon the jumps, abandon the flat for a bit of jumps action. The 2:30 at Galway. A horse I really like, Billericay Dicky for Willie Mullins. It's been pretty disappointing on the face of it. Absolutely hacked up in a Punchestown maiden on soft, heavy ground early at the start of the last jump season, then ran disappointingly at Ayr and again at Punchestown, where actually he was pretty well supported at the 48-hour declaration stage when the ground was good. And if you remember, they had that deluge of 48 hours. I remember it well because I backed and tipped him for that novice over 2 miles. He was quite well supported for that. Drifted wildly in the market, ran no sort of race at all, again on soft ground. You go back to his flat form in France. He won at Vichy on good ground. It was nearer good to firm. Was really impressive. He's got a gorgeous long, low action. He's definitely a horse that wants a sound surface. Got a mark of 128. The runner-up from that Punchestown maiden is rated 116. There was 11 lengths between them, but it could have been 111 lengths by the ease which Billericay Dicky won. So I think this mark of 128 is definitely fair. Has got to prove he stays this trip at 2 miles 6, but I think he's just going to be a class above these off this handicap mark, provided the rain stays away. And with this horse, I've got form of putting him up on sound surface and then the rain coming. But mark 128, Billericay Dicky in the 2:30 at Galway. I think he takes all the beating with Paul Townend on board. And then the 4:35, coming back close to home, Doncaster 4:35, the Riddler. He was a pretty smart performer when winning the Norfolk 2 years ago. Probably a bit of an upset. He was 50-1 on that occasion. Hasn't been able to repeat that since, but got given a mark of 108 after that run. But Ascot possibly blew his mind. He had a temperament issue coming into it, a question mark about temperament coming in. Survived that in the Norfolk and won, but has been very keen ever since. Clearly been difficult to train as well. They've sort of tried giving him breaks. They've tried backing him up quite quickly. He looked pretty much like a busted flush this season, but then just last time out in Newbury, finished third, given quite a lot to do. Key to me is he settled and finished his race off. He ran the race the right way round, finished quite strongly. He was off 72 there. He's now off 71. I just felt that maybe this was a horse that was just getting back to finding a little bit of form with himself. So I'm going to chance him in the 4:35 at Doncaster.
Yeah, that looks really interesting. Very, very winnable contest there for a horse of his quality. So fingers crossed he goes well. I've got one to add to the list for you back at Goodwood in the 2:25 summer handicap for Sean Woods and Tom Marquand. That's Ahab, who's a course winner, good run when winning at Goodwood earlier in the season. Quitted himself pretty well in listed companies since. And Sean Woods is pretty savvy with these middle distance types when stepping them up. And I thought 14-1 each way was very, very fair there. Now, a bit of housekeeping, and this is breaking news for you. You probably want to wait until the draw has been done, but SBK are offering you a 25% winnings boost on any runner in the Stewards Cup. It's well worth taking advantage of on Saturday's big race. Max stakes do apply there, so do open the SBK app and check that out. And if you're not an SBK user already, well, where have you been and what have you been doing? New customers get £30 in free bets when you place a £10 bet for the first time. It's 18 plus. T's and C's do apply, but do check SBK out. Right, I think that sort of brings us to an end. Decent Saturday racing, guys. Anything else to add?
Only that we also should keep an eye on Saratoga. I mean, it's a Saratoga Derby this week, not just from US perspective, but there are 2 European runners there. Legend of Time for Charlie Appleby and Godolphin. He's been running in the US. He's had 3 starts and he's won one of them, placed on a couple of other occasions. William Buick will be riding him. Mischief Magic is another runner for Charlie and William on the card. But also keep an eye out for Diego Velasquez, first time up in the US for Aidan O'Brien. He won the Meld Stakes last time at Leopardstown in really good fashion. He's currently 2-1 on the morning line for the Saratoga Derby, which is around 9 p.m. I think it's race number 7 or 8 on the Saratoga card on Saturday. So keep an eye out. It won't just be between the two. There are some good US horses in there as well, but I imagine Diego Velasquez will prove hard to beat.
Of that, and you're on Sky, are you at TC on Saturday?
I am indeed, yeah. I'll be on from 6-ish. So looking forward to the Derby, and it all leads up to the Whitney, a Grade 1 contest at the end of the card.
Fantastic. You've got a bit of evening stuff there from Donny as well to look forward to. Sorry, not Donny. Where are we on Saturday evening?
Windsor.
Windsor, of course, even better. Ross, anything from your side, mate? Anything interesting at Deauville for you?
No, I haven't looked at anything on this side of the sea for the weekend. I have to admit, I've been pretty immersed in switching between Goodwood and the Olympics. I drew a line at the walking race this morning. That even for me was just a stretch too far. But gymnastics, rowing, you name it, we're into it in this household at the moment, and I have to fight for the TV remote to get the racing on the big TV.
Amen. Yeah, we've been loving the Olympics in the office. Fingers crossed for various golf golf punts in the Olympic golf over the weekend at the Golf Nacional. Right, I'm veering way off track now anyway. So we'll say thank you very much for listening, and do make sure that you come back next week when Jess is back, and this is a far more coherent podcast with her. Do like and subscribe, and we'll catch you all then. Have a great weekend.